Hi everybody. Today I'm going to see if I can tackle a question that I get quite often from people who are interested in selling their website, and that is, how much is my website worth? Now the simplest answer is that your website is worth what you'll be able to sell it for. And that is actually very true because the fair market usually will determine the true value of something. And I've found that many times that is the best way for me to find out the value. Now the key to doing that is to list your website for a low starting bid and then let the interest of the bidders start to bid it up, and right around where the true value is, the bids will stop if you run a successful auction. Now, I also want to talk a little bit about how you can come up with an approximate value, because there are ways to value a site other than having to sell it to find out how much it's worth. And for me, one of the main things that I look at from my experience is the domain name. That's the first thing. You have a big history with domains, and a place that I like to do that at is domaintools.com, and I have an example here and a sample domain that is a website, and that is jibs.com. It's a 5-letter domain name. It's a .com, which is very important for value. Now everything I'm going to mention to you, there are exceptions to the rule, but generally I like to look at .coms. I do own .net. I also own .org. .com is my preferred. And then if I'm going to do a brandable type name, I want it to be less than 8 characters. I don't know, I read that somewhere. It doesn't always hold. I don't always hold fastly to that. If it's 9 letters or 10, as long as it's a .com that's brandable and short enough that people can remember. And if you look around at the really successful sites, they're usually going to be 8 characters or less, generally letters and a .com. So that holds true for this one. It's pronounceable, and it's actually a word, a actual English word. So that's very good. The next thing I do is I look at the age of the domain. How long has it been on the internet? And I can see this one was created back on 10/5/2008. So it's been around about 5 going on 6 years. So very good for that. The next thing that I look at is I look at a website called Estabot. It will give you an estimate on a domain name. And I've already pulled that up here. And this is what Estabot came back with. They came back with $280. Okay, and then they give more information, which of the extensions are taken. Not very many are taken, just the .com with this one. How many search results, search volume. It's a low search volume for that particular word. But once again, if I was going to brand a website with this, it's an easy domain to remember. And it's a word, actually. It's a nautical word, a sailing word that has to do with changing the sails from one side to the other side. It's called jibbing, or to jib, and so jibs. Okay, so it gives that information. I actually, based on my experience, I think this is a little low for a 5-letter dictionary word domain, but it's a start. Alright, so I'm going to go on to my second example. My second example is a generic term that has a pretty good search volume, and that is blousesforwomen.com. So it's very descriptive. Of course, it doesn't stick to the 8 letters or less, but this is an actual term that people search for, so that gives it value. Let's look at how old the domain is. Let's see, it was created here back on 6/30/2009, so it has some age with it. Very good. Let's see what Esteban has to say about this domain. Have it pulled up here. Quite a difference here. Blousesforwomen.com. The keyword is right there. Esteban value $5,200. Let's go down to the other extensions. Let's see, the .com, .net, and .org are all taken. Let's see here. Look down further. The search results, 67,000. Okay. Monthly searches for blouses for women, 113,000. That's where the value comes in. There's a lot of searches for this phrase, and thus the higher value for the domain, for an exactmatch.com. So right there, that gives this website value. It's built right into the domain, and I can't stress that enough. You have value built right into your domain, so that if you ever wanted to sell, even if it were the domain, you had value built in. Okay? Now the other things that we want to look at are things that have to do with the actual website. And one of the things you want to have is you want to have unique content. That's important. You want to have the more pages that are indexed, the better. And I like to call that the net, because if you have a website with 3 or 4 pages indexed, that's the net that that person has, that many pages in the search engine. However, if you have 100,000 pages in the search engines, that's a much bigger net than the 3 or 4. And so it just really equates to traffic. You get more traffic. Then you want to look at how the site is monetized, whether they're using AdSense, they're selling a direct product, and factor that into your value based on how much time you're going to have to put into it. One thing with monetizing a site, many times a rule of thumb will be a site is worth 6 to 12 months of its revenue. Once again, it's just, a rule of thumb. It's not something that always happens. I've sold websites that had no income, just potential for thousands because of other factors, whether it be the domain name or the uniqueness of the site. So all of these rules, you'll get more familiar with them, and you'll have a better judgment on what a website should sell for as you continue to pursue an online business. But those are some rules that you can look at. Those are some resources you can use, and the bottom line is a website is worth really what it can sell for. So thank you for listening to this video, and I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.